reminder to folks, we're broadcasting live on YouTube. It's a public meeting, and understand, so somebody can watch it live. Also understand somebody can go back and watch our discussion later on at their sort of convenience. So I'm going to ask people, if you are addressing the committee, that you kind of identify yourself so people know who it is that's speaking. So this is Brent Chondelmeyer. I'm chair of the building committee, Mid-Continent Public Library. The meeting is February 25th, 2021. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and somebody want to take a roll?
Teresa, can you?
Yeah, I can do that. Okay. Brent Chondelmeyer, Joycelyn Virgo. Yes. John Laney.
Here.
Michael Lazio.
Here.
Tom Thies.
Good morning.
Rita Weiss. Absent. Michelle Wyckoff is absent.
Okay.
Okay, I jumped past the agenda. Sorry about that. So if we can go back and see the agenda, and we can get a motion to adopt the agenda.
Just staff comment on this. We put a closed session on this because we thought we might have specific information. We don't have specific information that would warrant going into a closed session, but it was too late to pull it from the agenda. So just an FYI, if it's your pleasure, we can remove the closed session at this point, or we can just skip over it when we get there.
Let's skip over it.
Okay.
Brent Chondelmeyer. I see, by virtue of who the participants are our extraordinary and very talented staff who are working on these projects, and they're scattered around the state. So we welcome them and appreciate their presence. So here's the agenda in front of us. Does somebody want to make a motion?
Laney, approve.
Okay.
Michael, second.
Okay. All those in favor of the published agenda, say aye.
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 Okay. I'm good. We did the roll call. I jumped ahead. Anyone to make a motion on the minutes that we have in front of us from our last meeting?
Michael, I move to accept the meeting, notes from last meeting.
Okay. Second?
I'll second.
Any discussions, or anybody see anything they want corrected or amended? All those in favor say aye.
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 Minutes are approved. Thanks for staff for doing that. That's a hard job and we appreciate it doing, because we talk and somebody kind of makes sense of what we said. So that's not always easy. We're now down to item 4.1, the status and dashboard.
Right. I'll go ahead and run through that. So if we go to the next slide. This is our updated dashboard. 2 days ago in the board meeting, we saw the January dashboard. This is actually the February dashboard. There's not significant change in terms of new projects or new things that we're discussing, or actually, we probably should have changed the, because we are discussing, well, no, we changed our color coding. So no, our color coding's still right. Our numbers are still right in terms of our budget. We're still at 84.5 million with our soft cost contingency in place. And as we've worked through before, we still know our amount of money left to spend. In terms of projects, in terms of invoices paid, we're at 56% of the entire project is paid off and good to go. So in terms of the dashboard, I think we're still, there hasn't been a lot of activity on the dashboard except for paying of invoices really since the last update. But that's kind of where we are there. The next slide takes us into our status update. And so if we go to the next slide, last month in January, we did open the Parkville branch for people to be able to get in there and use it. And then South Independence had its substantial completion on January the 11th. If we go to the next slide, South Independence opened on February the 10th, and Grandview's substantial completion was February the 17th. And if we go to the next slide, the Grandview branch opening is coming up soon, and it will be on March the 22nd. So that's really the next sort of big thing that's happening, other than, projects moving on as expected. Colburn Road's moving on as expected. Boardwalk, I'm sorry, not Boardwalk, Green Hills is still going through permitting process and moving on as expected. Colburn Road is moving on as expected. There is another slide here, though, that I wanted to share with you. And yeah, it's this Woodneath Homestead update slide. So this is a series of bullets. Trudy Faulkner sent an email message that was updating all of this. So I just thought I would share it with you. I just lifted it straight out of her email and brought it in here. So right now at the Woodneath house, the 1850 homestead, they are preparing for plaster and rough-in work all the way through, trim and plaster work through February the 26th, so through tomorrow. Wood floor installation should be next week and should take about 2 weeks. Plaster installation starting on March the 1st and will take about a month. Paint trim and doors and fire shutter installation. This is part of the code that we actually have to have a rolling shutter for fire, because to create the firewall between the two buildings. But that's what that's referring to. But that happens on April the 1st. Refinishing the wood floors and final coats the last week of April. Painting the walls and ceiling on May the 1st. And then carpet installation on May the 15th. Leading to a final cleanup and punch list at the end of May. So, in some ways, May sounds like it's really far away. In some ways, it's just around the corner, particularly considering how much time we've had working on this project. So, from my perspective, it's just around that that the building will be done and the storage center will be moving in there, and we'll be using the new historic home. So. Probably just in time for us to be starting to consider live programming and things like that, in-person programming. So anyway, thought you might be interested in seeing that, so I thought I would share that with you. And I think that concludes what's the status of, Jake, are you with us this morning, Jake?
Yes, I am.
Anything to add?
No, I think you covered it quite well.
Okay.
Two quick notes. Our board chair has joined us.
Great.
Morning, Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
And Trudy Faulkner is our historic preservation architect that works for Strata and has advised us and worked on this project all along. So let's go to the next item.
Okay, so next item is property updates, and we've got two property updates that we wanted to share with you. One of them is work package 12 on North Oak, and then the other one's work package 15 on Lee Summit. And we're going to start with North Oak, in part because we had talked about North Oak at our last meeting, and on the phone, we do have representatives from SDA Helix and JE Dunn, and they can help us with some of the more detailed questions that might come up. But what I wanted to share with you today was we kind of looked at the idea of, if we were to build, and staff was recommending that we rebuild on the existing lot, if we were to rebuild, where would that fit and would it fit? And then the next point would be, what would it look like and how would it work? So the questions that we had from last time involved some of the site questions, and we did have a little bit more study on that, and we'll dive into that a little bit more. But let me share with you some of the additional work that we did in terms of siting and coming up with the concept for the building. So if we go to the next slide, this is really the same slide that you saw before, which kind of showed the concept of what it would look like for us to put the building on the existing site, to raise the existing building and then put a new building on the existing site. So this really is nothing new for you. If we go to the next slide, we're going to start looking at some additional information. So one of the things that we started looking at in terms of the building itself is being sensitive to the notion that where we are on North Oak Traffic Way is sort of a transition from a residential to a commercial neighborhood. I'm sorry, the other way around, from a residential to a commercial neighborhood. And certainly the property to the west of us is likely never to be anything other than residential. It's not likely to convert to retail or anything else like that. So part of what we got to looking at is how can we be sensitive to the notion that we don't necessarily want this building to look like a commercial building setting right across the street from someone's front yard. And so these were some of the exterior design inspirations that we were looking at that kind of got us thinking about what a transitional building might look like. And that's just really what these pictures represent. If we go to the next slide, this can kind of show you what it was that we were looking at. So this is one of the many angles that SDA and Helix put together for the building. And the roof line, the concept of the roof line is really supposed to mimic a tree. It was one of the images that they had in terms of sort of a large canopy with a trunk is kind of the idea. In terms of materials, this is facing east, so this is facing North Oak Traffic Way, and a lot of glass on this side of the building. But on the rest of the building, not as much glass, again, because we're right across the street from people's bedrooms. And so we're wanting to be sensitive to that nature. You can see that on the right-hand side is this is essentially the ground. This is the grade level. And on the left-hand side is the 2 level. It's the split level. So you up above is where we have our programming space and where we have our collaboration rooms, and magazine reading was something we were talking about possibly putting up there. And then down below was stacks on that left-hand side. If we go to the next slide, this is actually the floor plan concept for North Oak that really does illustrate that even more so. So on the left-hand side, what you're seeing that it almost looks like a big dining room table that's right there on the left-hand side, on the right edge of the left-hand picture. That's actually the entryway. That's the entryway and the airlock and that brings you into the building. And then you see that there's some computers there. There's the service desk is that L-shaped thing that's sort of there in the middle. You've got a learning stair that's going down, and that similar in concept to what we built at Redbridge. We've got stacks in that sort of blue and yellow that's right there. Those are stacks, mostly of children's books, picture books. And then the yellow that's sort of there at the far back, that's one of the staff areas. And then right in the middle where the learning stair is also the elevator, and there's also a back stair. There's a staff stair that's there. If you go over to the 2 blocks that are on the right-hand side of the picture, the top block is the upper part, and the pink box in the middle is the programming space. But you can also see that there's collaboration rooms up there. That's the other little pink boxes, but there's also rooms for people or space for people to be reading magazines and things like that up there. And then down below on the lower box is are the stacks. And there's also, I should also mention on the upper level, the green box that's up there is the librarian's office. And if you go to the lower level, the green box, the yellow box that's in there the green box is a shelving area. And I can't remember the purpose of the yellow box. I think it might be another workroom. The point is, and the reason I'm belaboring this point, is that we actually set up the program on this space so there's a lot of organic staff engagement on all 3 levels. And this is important because, the reason that staff has always been opposed to the notion of a multi-level library is because when you have 1 floor and 2 floors, it becomes more expensive to manage it and to operate it because you always have to have people stationed on every floor. On the other hand, if you organically design the building so that there's a lot of staff activity because you've got a page room, there's more staff activity because you might put the staff break room, for example, in another area. Basically, what we did is we spread the staff areas over all 3 areas and put activities there to help assure that there would just naturally be staff there all the time, and we wouldn't have to purposefully schedule. One of the other things that I wanted to talk about is sort of backtrack and talk a little bit about some of the comments from last time. So let me start with a quick one right here. And I think Brad McKenzie's on the phone and he can answer, and I'm not sure if he's got all the answers on this, but I know I've been asking him to look at emergency power, an emergency power generator for this location, mostly to help with things like the elevator in the event that the elevator were to go down. And Brad was researching that. And Brad, I don't know if there's anything that you need to add right now, but we are researching that as something that we would add to this GMP. Probably natural gas would probably be the source. Is there anything to add right now, Brad?
No, I think you covered it. We're just trying to look at options to get one that's affordable and right sized for what we need.
Yeah, and so it wouldn't necessarily look to keep all the lights on and all the systems up and running in a power down situation, but it would give us an opportunity where life safety would be able to. Well, you're not supposed to use elevator in a fire, but if we did lose power, that the elevator would still be operational, which would even if the lights were not fully operational. If we can go back to the site plan, that's a couple slides back. Yeah, that one's good. So one of the big discussions that we had and the takeaway that I had and that I immediately got our engineers and everybody involved with was the site. That we have had problems with our existing building on this piece of property. And sort of the bottom, what I did is I asked the architects and their engineers, as well as J.E. Dunn, to go and really kick the tires and figure out, okay, what exactly caused everything that we're talking about? And is that just inherent to the property? In other words, no matter what building we build and where we build it, are we still going to have the same problems? Or was it something specific to the construction of the building? I think after the report that I sent to you all, and I sent it last night, so you may not have had an opportunity to take a look at it. But the report that I sent to you all pretty much indicates that a lot of this was human error in the way that we built our existing building. And that there's no reason to think that what experience we've had on our existing lot will follow a new building. Most of the reasons that we had problems or some of the extensive reasons why we had problems were with the issues of the soil, and the soil was not. The feeling is the soil was not adequately treated or compacted for putting in the footings. The footings and the slab itself were probably underconfigured, which did not help the situation at all. We have talked about a groundwater situation, and there was some discovery that the groundwater that the amount of mitigation that should have occurred around the foundation was not put in place, and it just made the situation worse as time went on. I kept talking about a drainage swale that we built over. I kind of conflated a couple of things and messed some things up on this. We didn't actually build over a swale, but we did abandon an old sanitary sewer line. And my speculation now, after looking at the plans, and I think Jim Coulter, Jim Stufflebeam, is that we didn't do a good job of filling in where that sanitary sewer line used to be, which created a path of least resistance, which created a weak spot, which affected the building. All of these things are things that can and should be fixed. And it should be easy for us to address them and not make the same mistake again with a new building. The report that I sent you sort of had 5 big takeaways, but I would say the 2 really, really big points are that our previous builder and engineers did not do a good job of compacting the soils or exchanging some of the unsuitable build soils. This is something that we've done repeatedly in our new building program that they didn't do in our old building program. And that we didn't properly mitigate the situation for the water that did come on the building, on our site. It was not it was not a problem that could not have been fixed. It's just they chose not to fix it. Those are sort of the big top level topics. But Jim and Jim, I think Jim Stufflebeam's on, and I presume that Jim Coulter
Yes.
may be on. What did I miss? What would you like to share?
Oh, hi, Steve. This is Jim Stufflebeam. No, you covered it pretty well. And excuse me. And you could say it was human error, but I don't know that I would say it was unreasonable or negligent. It was just kind of technology and practices of the time. And Jim Shelton may have built this building for you. I don't recall, but I certainly wouldn't want to throw him under the bus in any.
No.
So it's not like that. It's just the
Right.
combination of those things of poor soils, standard slabs and footings, and that the building was right along the north edge. So any surface water or underground water comes right up against the building, and there just wasn't much room to take care of it. And they probably didn't put in foundation drains or anything like that to keep the water out of those soils. The other key component is the soils are very plastic, which means they expand and contract a lot when they get dry or when they get wet. There's a lot of movement in those soils between dry and wet. So that when they shrink, then the building structure is not able to support itself well enough. So all of those factors come into play.
Jim Coulter, did you have anything to add?
No, one thing, I think you hit pretty much everything. The technology that we use now, we call it LVC, low volume change material. And so on all of our new buildings, and including this one, we'll have we're just getting the geotech here, but it'll have 18 to 24 inches of that low volume change material under the building pad. And that addresses what Stufflebeam just said about that expansive play. So I feel like we're in good shape.
Well, I appreciate the committee asking the questions last time because it really did encourage us to dive into this and to make sure that we didn't make the same mistake twice, which if there is any one mantra that we've had through the entire building program is let's not make the same mistakes that we made in 1988. So.
Steve, this is Jake.
Yeah. Hey, Jake.
One more thing I might add that the building committee might not be aware of is we actually have a third-party inspection people who come in and look at all the issues with the ground and the pouring of the slab and everything that has to do with the building. And that's a kind of a fail-safe for us. And we've been doing that with all of our buildings as well. So just just one more thing that we've been doing that we didn't do before that'll help us.
Actually, we started doing that with the Platte City building too. We were talking about Jim Shelton before. No, Jim didn't actually build this, but Jim has been responsible for trying to put all the Band-Aids on it for the last 15 to 20 years. And when Jim and I were responsible for putting together the Platte City building, that was the first time that we started doing the geotech and the engineering and the certification of those sorts of things. And again, you do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, you do better. And that's what we've been doing.
So Steve, I might add the new building, as Jim Coulter just indicated, and this is Jim Stufflebeam, by the way, will have soil mitigation, it'll have geotech, it'll have third-party inspections. It is further away from the north property line. You see on this site plan, there's paving to the north side of your building, new building. That will help to get the water around the building. And then we'll have subsurface drainage systems. There'll be an active sump somewhere in the lower part of the building to make sure water pressure is taken away. So all of those things will be addressed to mitigate that problem.
Thank you, Jim. Probably back to you now, Brent. I mean, I think, unfortunately, I did what I always do. I opened up the fire hose and just let you all drink from it. But there's a lot here to to react to, but that's what we're shooting for. I'm trying to get your reactions and make sure that staff is advising our partners correctly.
So I open it up to the building committee. There's two questions. There's the water mitigation and there's the design. And so pick whichever one you might want to speak to, and happy to hear from you.
Yeah, this is Michael, and I'm familiar with the site because my business was on North Oak and Gladstone for 22 years, and then I'm the new kid on the block, sort of on the building committee. But I know just in what you said, I read through the sheet, Steve, that you sent out. Thank you very much for that. And yeah, just those 5 points. And I was just kind of shaking my head after I read through those 5 points. That was like, wow, there's a lot going on with this site, and especially in the water issue. And I don't know how much money we've spent over the years trying to correct all that. Somebody probably has that figure, but I'd still be concerned about that. I know we got new technologies now and all that kind of stuff, and appreciate the work everybody's done on that. But personally, I still have some concerns over that. And I think at one point in one of the earlier building committee meetings that I was involved in, we looked at selling this site or trading this site or something because of all those issues. And hopefully I'm remembering that conversation correctly. If not, apologize. But I thought that was in the, there were some comments about that or some thoughts around that. So anyway, that's my, my 2 cents at this point.
Thank you, Michael. Michelle, I know.
Hey, it's
Yeah.
sorry, I'm driving. No, I'm still, I mean, I understand everyone's concerns, but I'm really happy with the design. I'm really happy with all the work that's gone into it. I just would really like to keep it here if we can. So that's it. I don't have anything great. I just appreciate everything everybody's done.
Yep.
Other comments from the committee?
Yeah, just one, Michael, I'm the new kid on the block. This is Ron. But I'm just noticing the inspiration, the concept. I think these are just architecturally, aesthetically so pleasing. And I noticed the pink space allocated for the stage and the presentations. I've attended other presentations there, and this is just a wonderful, I won't say improvement, but change.
Yeah, I'd like to say I love the design of the building. I think that's really cool. So great job on that. So I really like that. So just make that comment as well.
And to underscore, Michael, if you're anything like me, you do like people to verify that you did remember what you thought you remembered. And yes, you did remember what you thought you remembered. We were looking to abandon the site in part because of the condition of the building. And we thought that it might be easier, we'll put that, it might be easier for us to try to get a piece of land, build a new building, move to that building and sell this site. What we discovered when it came to property acquisitions, it wasn't easier for us to do that. We were having a real difficult time finding a piece of property that suited our needs within our budget. And so that's why we went back to this plan with the caveat that, and staff, trust me, if staff felt like we were not in a position to address all of these issues, we wouldn't have brought this solution. We would have still kept looking for some other piece of property. But yeah, we were equally concerned about that from the outset. But we are feeling comfortable with where we are now, so.
Any other comments from the committee?
Oh yeah, Brent, just a quick question on a small matter. I I was at our Antioch branch yesterday, and the first thing you notice when you walk in at all of them are these display cases for people in the neighborhoods and local communities to share collections and little things they have. Are we going to have something like this at North Oak?
If I remember correctly, Ron, the display cases are on either side of the front door.
Wonderful. Great.
Let me get that site plan or that floor plan up. Well, I might be
Steve.
wrong about that.
Yeah,
Help
Steve,
me out here, Jim.
I think we actually have those located up on the wall by the programming room.
Oh, I see him. Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
you're right.
Yeah, and there
so-
was some discussion about camera collection as well. We understand there will be some of the camera collection will be there, so we have some display cases up there and some place for like you said, for the community elements or for the camera collection. Next to the vestibule, like we've had at some of the other branches, because of the nature of the split level, it was just crowding that entrance to put them down there. So we went away from that on this particular project.
Yeah, I see where that is. It looks like there's 4 display cases if I'm looking at that right. Up
Correct.
there on the pink box on the second level.
Yes.
So.
John, Joycelyn, either of you?
And forgive me if I missed this in your presentation. I had a little audio issues, but last time we looked at this because of the split level, my question was, how are we going to address individuals with mobility issues in case of something like a power outage or
Elevator.
something like that?
Right, Joycelyn, and we did talk about that a little bit earlier. We obviously the elevator is going to be the primary way for people to get from floor to floor, other than the stairs. And we are looking at installing. Brad McKenzie had responded that we're looking at adding a generator that would be able to power that in a loss of electricity situation. So the generator might not actually power the entire building, but it would power, the emergency services. So.
Okay.
And Brad's still working on all the details, but has had to do similar work for other projects that he's been involved with. So.
Yeah, this is Brad. We've done a lot of safe rooms that require generators. So we have a lot of experience with purchasing them, and there's a size aspect to it where once you get to a certain level, it could power a lot of stuff, but it's a little bit more expensive. And then from there, you step down to a smaller size that would be just big enough to power the elevator and maybe a couple of other ancillary items. So we're just trying to work with JE Dunn on pricing for those options, make sure that we get the elevator, which is a necessity. And then back to the concerns about the water. One of the things we're looking at is putting a drain around the entire building and having that connected to a sump to make sure that in the event that there is a lot of water coming through there, it's pumped out, and we would connect that sump to the generator as well. That way, if there is a power outage during a big storm, we don't have to worry about the water issues. So doing a lot of things to address both of those items, the life safety and the stormwater issues.
I appreciate you taking a look at that. With all the power issues going around in the world today, it's important to look ahead with that. But thank you.
This is Brent. We're not listed for a vote on this item, but understand is that if we have any concerns whatsoever, this is the point to express them. I know Michael raised some reservations because to commit more time and more effort and more design if we're not going to be at this site would not be prudent. And so for my part, I really appreciated the memo. The memo was really clear and really precise. And if you haven't read the memo, I would encourage you to do so. And actually, I would encourage it to be a part of our minutes because I think it addresses some questions that we paused last time that we were together. So
we will include that. Teresa, I think I copied you on that when I sent it out to everybody.
Thank you. So unless there's open for further discussion really around this, really appreciate the presence of our professional staff here and the thought and care that they brought to us and responsive to our concerns. So I'm going to suggest we'll move on to Lee's Summit unless there's anything else anybody wants to say. We should hear from you,
Sure.
but if not, we'll move on.
Well, and like North Oak, the purpose of the Lease Summit presentation is to show you some of the work that the design team and our construction group have been working on for Lease Summit and the advice that we've been giving them. And so you can sort of see that direction, and if we are heading down the wrong trail to help us redirect before we get all the way down the road. So if we can go to the slide that is Lease Summit branch schematic design. Okay, and so the next slide. This is the site plan for the Lease Summit branch. And so if you're looking at this, and this is an updated site plan compared to what we have today. If you're actually looking at the site plan, the building, the existing building is essentially the light yellow part. The darker yellow is the new addition to the building. And so everything's a lot smaller compared to where we are right now. Also, the drive lane is realigned on this site plan compared to what we have now. There is parking on the other side of the drive lane, which a lot of that parking does not currently exist. If you look on the top, you can see that there's a green rectangle. That green rectangle is a recovery of green space, where we're actually taking out a little bit of the least desirable parking for the shopping center and turning it into some green space. It's on the back of our building. It's not going to be particularly desirable for us, but the real advantage to this is that it creates a soft surface so that our stormwater detention guidelines actually end up being a net zero. We don't have to increase our stormwater detention or do anything like that because we're building this additional green space on the top. And everything that's being shown here is being allowed or being permitted due to the property swap that we did on Tuesday night. I mean, the property swap is what allows us to do all of this. Probably one more thing before we leave the site plan. If you look at the drive lane just below the building, you can see that there's a built crosswalk that's sort of there. And it's not really meant to be a speed bump, but it will, for whatever the reason, we can't figure out what it is. When people get at the top of that drive lane and decide they want to leave, they decide they need to get their car up to about 50 miles an hour as they're driving through that area. But we've actually added a curve to the drive lane, and we've added that crosswalk and added a little bit of a rumble there, which should actually help slow things down in terms of traffic. And of course, technically everything on the other side of that crosswalk is no longer ours. That actually belongs to that was part of the property swap that we did before. So this is the new site plan. One of the things that I should mention about the site plan, and I have mentioned this before and going to continue to mention this, part of what we're doing on this as well is looking to flatten out the parking lot a little bit. It's essentially an ADA issue. Our parking lot's too steep, and certainly, people can attest to this. It's not unusual for people to have strollers and for the stroller to get away from them and to roll halfway down the parking lot before they get it. And we need to flatten out that parking lot a little bit. And so that is going to be an increased charge, but I think it's going to be well worth it. And I don't think it's going to break our budget. One of the things that I told you last month that I spent about 20 years pushing a wheelchair for my mom. And I am very, very cognizant and aware of what a steep grade can mean on a parking lot. And so I think helping to address that issue here not only helps moms and strollers, helps our staff in terms of emptying book drops, but also helps folks who may be visiting with wheelchairs and things like that. So this is the site plan concept. Not terribly different, but does make a big difference, and I'll show you exactly how in the next couple of slides. So if we go to the next slide, again, this is similar. We had those inspirational drawings before that sort of told you what was inspiring us for Lee Summit, for North Oak. This is the same thing. This kind of shows ideas of some other drawings, some other buildings that have been built recently that help to inspire the concept that we are doing in terms of the addition on Lee Summit. So if we go to the next slide, this is the updated Lee Summit branch. And so what we do is we add metal panels and give the building a little bit of height, as well as using the library lettering that we've been doing on all of our buildings. And the metal panels, these are actually panels directly, essentially almost directly on the building itself, as opposed to the scrim wall, which is what we saw at Colburn Road. But this treatment is going to, in a way, kind of reflect what happened at Colburn Road. So people are going to link the buildings a little bit. You can clearly see it's branded well. The wall goes out over a drive lane, and that drive lane, what it's going over is the drive-up window. And so this kind of helps. I mean, it will insinuate to people there's something that I can drive to when you've got that cover like that. And it also creates a billboard effect, which helps people to more easily see the library. So this perspective of this drawing is sort of taken from down on the corner on what is now the other, or what will soon be the other people's property. But this does begin to, and actually you can see the sidewalk the crosswalk that I was talking about. You can kind of see that in this image as well. And so one of the things that you begin to ask when you're looking at something like this is, well, this is all well and good, but what does this do in terms of visibility? And that's what our next slide is meant to show. So it's a little harder to see, but if you look in the corner up, and I can actually send you the full picture if you'd like to see it. But if you look at the image up at the top where it says existing, you can see that our building is non-existent. You cannot see our building in that existing photo. On the other hand, when you go to the one down below, you can clearly see the words library. You can see our logo. You can see the billboard where you drive under to the drive-up window. Simply put, if you happen to look over at the right time on 50 Highway, you can see the building as we're proposing. If you happen to look over at the right time right now, you probably won't even see our building. So this really does help to increase visibility. And I'm going to mention this. We have been toying around with the idea of, in addition to all of this that we're talking about, adding a sign as well, a monument sign or some sort of a sign to this. We're not sure we're going to be able to afford that with the flattening of the parking lot and everything else we're talking about. But I think you can see that this increases visibility considerably, even without a monument sign. And of course, this is from 50 Highway. I mean, you can't actually just drive over from there because you're on a road where people are driving 70 miles an hour. But it does significantly increase the visibility of the existing building. And part of that is because the building moves further out into what used to be the drive lane and is now part of our building. That's kind of the difference between the two pictures. The next pictures actually begin to talk a little bit about, because I thought you might be curious, it talks a little bit about program and floor plan. But let me stop right there before we do that. And because this is the first time you've seen some of the things that we're talking about doing at the Lee Summit branch. So let me stop here for a second and get some feedback, and then we can go in and talk a little bit about program and where the programming room is and how the stacks are laid out and things like that.
Any comments from the committee?
Yes, this is John Laney, and that's been one of my major concerns for this site. And I think you've solved it beautifully. I really think that is what I'd hoped we could do, was to be really raise the visibility of this, so people would be more aware of the library in that location. And I think you've done a great job.
Thank you, John.
Yes, Michael, I would echo John's sentiments as well. It looks really great. I love the visibility, increased visibility, and yeah, it's really, really great job.
Thanks.
Well, I would agree with those two statements. I like the leveling of the parking area. That I agree with you, Steve. That was very much needed for safety, for a lot of different things. I also like having the drive-up window where it's located. Where is that also going to be where the book drops are?
Yeah, Joycelyn, what we're talking about doing, actually what we've been talking about also doing is putting an AMH, an automatic material handler,
Okay.
and setting it up so that it's got a drive-up book drop that can be converted into an automatic handler like we've got at Woodneath, or it can just be a standard book drop. And we keep fighting as to whether that drive-up book drop needs to be before the drive-up window or after the drive-up window, but essentially in the same drive lane.
Well, either way, I think that's a massive improvement because there was just too much activity at that front door. You had people driving up, dropping people off, dropping books off. And it was the major entrance. So I think that's 100% improvement with that. I do have some concerns. I think the improvements are wonderful, but this is our number one branch. The programming here is usually full most of the time, and I'm still concerned that we may still need more parking. I know we have parking on the backside of the building that may be available, but I'm thinking more in terms of parking for us. Now, given that we just increased Colburn, we just built Lee Summit East, some of the traffic from here may be eased, but this serves a totally different group than I think the other two branches do. This branches into South Kansas City, North Grandview, that kind of area, where there's not a whole lot else around. Because on this side of town, the nearest branches going that way would be like Blue Ridge and Grandview.
Correct.
Red Bridge are branches that would be on that side. And I'm wondering, I know you've thought it through, but I still have concerns that we may not have adequate parking.
I know we actually are increasing our parking in part because we're building on that parking lot that technically we don't own, but we can park cars on. Jim or Brad, do you happen to remember the parking counts and what the parking counts are relative to, another building and all of that?
Yeah, Steve, this is Jim. I think, and the numbers may be on that site plan, actually. I think we're pushing towards about 90 spaces available on the east side of the building, including that north lot across the drive. So that's a 4-to-1 ratio, 4 parking spaces per 1,000 square foot of building. And that's been the target for all of the branches. Some of the branches have exceeded that where possible, but the codes and zoning, for example, require only like 2.5 spaces per 1,000 square feet. And
Jim, am I reading this right where it says net gain of 31? Does that sound right to you?
That sounds about right. I'm not seeing those numbers on the screen, but yeah. What's the total? What does it say the total is?
92.
Yeah, that's what I recall.
Yeah, I think there's just 56 existing,
Yeah.
so it is a pretty significant increase.
Yeah.
I just know when they have outdoor programming, that does eat up some of the spaces that's available, but it's also a big draw, thinking in terms of when they bring the lions in, for instance, or when they bring the horses in the pen. You can tell I've been to a lot of these programmings. It just really takes up a lot of space because you also have to cordon off a space in the lot where there's not a lot of traffic. And I'm just wondering,
Well, and the new grass space on the backside of the building is going to help for doing that sort of thing. Where in the past we couldn't do. You're right. We had to eat up parking spaces to have outdoor programming. We don't necessarily have to do that, but with the new design. But yeah, the number that I was looking for was how many additional spaces do we have? And it's 31. And so we're adding, about a third more parking spaces.
I might add 2 points. Another component of this is a new sidewalk along the north side of the building, which will make it easier for folks to use the shopping center parking and have better access to the main entrance of the library. So that will be improved. And then
there will be a sidewalk where they're not in the way of traffic zooming out that exit.
Correct. Right.
Okay. And that addresses my concerns because that parking lot to the top of the building there is not usually full.
The one caveat to this is that the spaces on the north side of the drive, which the library is going to put in and you will have benefit of, but will actually be on the shopping center property. Those folks are in control of that, and exactly how many spaces end up there is a little bit squishy. They could put like an ATM on the north end of that little lot next to the tire shop. That might take out 2 or 3 spaces. So there could be some fluctuation in that total final count.
Yeah. Or that tire shop could take it over with customers.
Yeah, they could use that lot as well, but typically their customer count is not very high, and they have several spaces right in front of their building currently. So we didn't have a huge concern about that. But that is always possible that they could use those, yes.
Okay. I think that addresses my concerns. Thank you.
Any other questions about this before we go into the programming space?
Okay, so hearing none, let's go to the next slide. And the next slide, this is the floor plan for this building. And so on the plan, if you notice where you can kind of see where the door is, and then there's sort of the 2 sort of rectangles that are setting out in front of the building. Those 2 rectangles are where the existing door is today. And so we're actually moving the entrance a little bit off to the right, which makes it more in the center of the new building because we're adding more space to the right, if you will. You can see that in the corner of the building, in the lower right-hand corner, is where our programming space is. And this is a considerable room. We are actually, depending upon what budget allows, we are definitely going to prepare the building for a movable, an operable partition wall. But if budget allows, we'll install it. If budget doesn't allow, then it'll be ready and we'll be able to add it quickly and without a lot of additional cost. But that's where you can see the new programming room. If you follow that on up, you can see this is the staff area. And that's where the drive-up window is, sort of all that gray space that's there is the new built staff area. The yellow area is the children's library, for lack of a better term. It's where we have our picture books and things of that nature. The blue stacks are the various adult collections. And then on the left-hand side, where you see the blue boxes, those are our collaboration rooms and some soft seating. So it really does increase the collection size, but also the programming size. I was looking on here in terms of seating capacity, and it's on here. I just can't read it. Brad or Jim, do you happen to remember what the size of this room is in terms of theater size, seating capacity, and what it would compare to? similar.
talking about for the community room?
Yeah,
This is Brad. Yeah, I think our target was 120, but I can pull that image up and verify that for you real quick.
Yeah, and
It's similar to the Blue Springs South area, Steve.
I was thinking it was that size or maybe a little larger because it can be cordoned off. Which, but anyway, this is what program is looking like. And then we've got a couple of interior design concepts on the next slide. So if we go to the next slide, this is actually standing sort of in front of, on the left, it's standing in front of the new door, but facing the new programming room as opposed to looking out the front door. But you can see there's a lot of glass that allows you to see into the building. And people can see out as well. But also really nice proximity to programming space and front door. And then the next picture on the right-hand side is if you were standing against the back wall in the children's area, essentially, but looking or close to the children's area, and you were looking forward toward the front door. And you can see what we're looking at in terms of some of the design concept for opening up the ceiling a little bit to create a little bit of height in that building. The building's always felt a little claustrophobic to me, and part of it is because it's kind of built into a hillside. And so there's no windows on three sides of the building. And so part of what we're doing is we're adding a lot of natural light on one side where we can, and then we are raising the ceiling in a key location, which will allow for there to feel like there's a little bit more height, even though we're not actually raising the building itself. I think it's going to be pretty attractive. The scheme that Taylor, the interior designers, come up with is using those trapezoid puzzle pieces. Brad says it's 150 seats in the community room, so that's going to be that's a good sized community room. So it's those like those trapezoid puzzle pieces that you can put together, and when you put them together, it can look like a fox or it can look like a dog or things like that. And that's actually what's in the ceiling is those trapezoid pieces that are purposefully put in shapes so that they actually make things. And it's gonna be a fun thing where kids can come in and they can look for the dog or look for the cat or whatever the trapezoid shape is. It's gonna be kind of neat. And also sort of direct kids to where the children's area is. To sort of follow the shapes. So I think that's it in terms of the slides that we put together for the presentation. But just wanted to share with you sort of conceptually what we were looking at for the interior concept at Lee Summit.
Any comments on the programming or interior space from the committee? Brent Schandelmeyer, excuse me.
Well, Steve, I'm going to have a comment. I like the interior space. I've gone to this branch a lot, and I like that there's a lot of space, but I like the fact that there's a lot of tables and meeting areas outside of just the meeting rooms, because this branch is used a lot for tutors to meet their students. You go in there and there's not a table available a lot of times. So I like how it's spread out. I like the meeting rooms. I like the fact that it can be cordoned off as well as opened up. I think you'll have many events that will still be sold out, but I think it's an adequate space. I think it's a good use of space and it's attractive, and I love the ceiling tile thing. So I like the interior.
I'll actually get you, I'll get you a reflected ceiling plan, Joycelyn. I think you'll really like seeing all those different shapes that they put together. It's fun. It's fun.
I think the kids would really like that. I mean, this branch is used by a lot of homeschoolers who come for the science presentations that you do as part of their homeschool curriculum. It's used a lot for reading and literacy as well as tutoring. I think having something like the ceiling tiles that changes all the time will make the library fun and refreshing all the time. The kids will look for that. So
It's also, the other thing that's really exciting, this is true of all of our buildings, but particularly interesting in this building is that there's a lot of multi-generational use where there's a
Yes.
lot of grandparents with children. And so balancing how do you make something that's equally comfortable and attractive for seniors as it is for young children is a little bit of a challenge, so.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of grandparents are bringing their kids to programming. So yeah,
Mhm.
I think this space will be very much liked by the community and will get a lot of use. Good job.
Any other,
Thanks.
I'm sorry, any other comments?
Yeah, Brent, this is Ron. I just had one, again, from my perspective as a new member. I noticed on the construction update, and one of the first pages of the handout, you see, everything we have right now has a foundation that started in 2014. So, I sometimes got the impression that this was not an overnight experience, but it shows 7 years of incredibly focused attention to the needs of the users. And it's remarkable, but very much the pattern. And the other question, a lot of times you go into new buildings, you see certain plaques or recognition for lack of a better word, a green perspective to the design. Are we eligible for anything like that? A public recognition for the efforts?
In terms of green design, no.
Okay, because we're governmental or?
No, because we've chosen not to.
Okay.
We did this at Woodneath and, jumped through all the hoops and all of that, and it ended up it cost us a lot of money to get that plaque, when frankly, we were going to do the right thing, whether we had a plaque or not.
Yeah.
And so what the design team has been working on, and what the engineers have been working on, is they've been designing to our sustainable operations policies, which involve, using the LED lighting and the low flow or, water conscious fixtures and all of those everything that you would do to get that plaque, but not actually doing the paperwork to get the plaque. At one point, I actually looked into this to get us recognized in what's called the sustainable category. And I think it was going to cost us about $75,000 just to file the paperwork.
Yeah.
Not to get anything, just to file the paperwork. And that just doesn't seem to be a good use of taxpayers' money when we're going to do the right thing anyway.
Yeah, that's a prudential approach. I'd rather spend money on architects than, lawyers filing forms.
Exactly. Brad or Jim Coulter, Jim Stufflebeam, did you want to talk about anything else that we're doing to make sure that we're, doing the right? I mean, I know out on the construction sites, we have we try to recycle the construction materials and all those things. But I mean, we're generally adhering to our sustainable, mid-continent sustainability policies throughout, is my understanding.
Yeah, this is Brad. Another big part of that is the HVAC systems. We are in pretty much all of the renovations, replacing the furnaces with higher efficiency furnaces, and then in many cases, completely redoing the HVAC with a much higher efficient VRF system, which it's way more energy efficient. Plus, it gives better control. It's just new technology. So the HVAC is a big deal, along with the lighting, low VOC products. One of the nice things about LEED is when it first started, which is the common green certification. When it first started, many architects were not really thinking about this, and it became a way to push sustainable design to the forefront. And now, like Steve said, I mean, we do most of the things that are required for LEED buildings regardless. It's just how we practice anymore. So energy efficiency, energy efficient windows, insulation, continuous perimeter insulation. There's so many things that we put into these projects to help with energy efficiency and sustainable design. Like Steve said, you can pay a lot of money to get the certification, but know that the design is there.
Yeah, thank you.
And just one more comment on this and I'll let it go. Jeff Vandal, who was the chair of the building committee at one point, was an engineer and very much involved with all of this. He was from Platte County, and he actually helped us create our sustainable operations policies that the board adopted. And so those are actually in the board policies saying, this is what we're going to do. And we're going to hold ourselves accountable, and that's what we do. And what we have been doing, a lot of it is when we get to a place, that's when we fix it. So when Aaron Gordon and his team go out because they have to fix a toilet because it's not working right, they'll replace it with a low flow toilet, for example.
So this is Brent Schoenemeyer. I actually appreciate Ron raising this point. It would be good to figure out what operational efficiencies we've attained. I understand is that building usage has been affected by COVID-19, but at some point, to Brad's point, what have we saved on HVAC and what it is that looks like. So I would just list that as a future something for the building committee in 2022 to look at and sort of evaluate what operational efficiencies have been achieved.
The good news is those are 2 point in time studies. And the good news is that we have the before study already. Quan and I have been working with a group called Natixis, I believe. I think that's the name of them. Teresa, do you remember, wasn't that the name of the company?
I just saw it.
Because you just saw it because
I forgot the name of it. Yeah, it was something weird like.
Yeah, and they actually have run all of the work to figure out what our baseline is and already did help us get some of our buildings in better shape even before the capital plan started in earnest. But we've been working with them long term, and yeah, when things pick back up again, we'll be able to update the study and we'll be able to say this is what it was before, this is what it is after. Paul Harrell, who used to be the CFO at the North Kansas City School District, is our primary contact. That's what he does now, is he goes around and helps people make sure that their buildings are operating efficiently. So
this is Brent Schoenemeyer. I had one quick question. So we've seen Lee Summit and we've seen North Oak. Are these ready to go out for bid? I failed to really kind of ask that or think about that.
North Oak is still in our design phase. Lee Summit is moving quick. If I remember correctly, we've got a 90% document review coming up pretty soon. Is that correct, Brad or Jim?
Yeah.
Jim, I'll pipe in. We get documents from the design team in March, and then we're going to bid in April. So we'll come to the building committee in April with our GMP. The board in May for Lee Summit.
For Lee Summit. So yes, moving right along, Brent.
Okay. Anything about either of these two projects before we move on to the next item? It's listed as a closed session. We won't have a closed session. Steve Potter will just give us an update really relative to property scan for Grain Valley.
Right. So
I had a quick question for Steve.
Yes.
When do you anticipate Colvin Road opening?
I don't know. One of the folks on the call may actually have a better idea.
Steve, this is Jake. You want?
Thanks, Jake.
I can take that.
Thanks, Jake.
We're looking at a substantial completion around April 15th. So probably the end of May would be a target, or the first part of June.
That would be great, just in time for the summer reading program. Good. So at that point, we'd be free to work on Lee Summit Branch.
Yeah, we'd have to close Lee Summit Branch down just because of the if you remember the logistics of everything. We originally closed when we did East Lee Summit, we closed Colburn Road and we pulled books and such from there. And we're going to do the same exact concept from to Colburn Road from Lee Summit. So
a lot of people are waiting for that one to open.
Yep, yeah, and it's looking great. It's going to be.
It looks beautiful.
Awesome. I think you're going to really enjoy this the new Colburn Road.
Okay, thank you.
Brent, John Laney, I'm sorry, I have a vaccine scheduled and we're going to have to leave right now. So I appreciated your presentations and I think things are going great.
Thank you, John. Brent Schoenemeyer, Steve, I think it's back to you.
Okay, so what we'll talk about is, as you know, we have been looking, really the two final projects that we have in terms of potential property acquisition, if we're going to carry on doing what it is that is in the capital plan, is for Grain Valley and East Independence. We went into closed session and we talked a lot of detail about what was going on in Grain Valley. A couple of our properties are no longer options for us, but I think we still have a very positive alternative. One of our top options is still on the table and we're still working on it to try to figure out, what we should potentially offer and what site conditions are going to be so that we can build it and it will make sense. So there will be more to report probably at the next meeting. There might even be a recommendation at the next meeting. But at this point, there's nothing new there's nothing significant to report other than two of the properties have been taken off the market. And that just really helps to refine our decision-making process better.
Thank you. This is Brent Schoenemeyer. Thank you, Steve. Other business, I'm not aware of any, but somebody else may have something or something they want to raise or ask about. Now would be the time.
I have nothing additionally. Anybody from staff or the design team or Jim Coulter, the construction folks? Not hearing anything, Brent.
Before we adjourn, I want to thank the design team and the construction folks for taking the time to meet with us and just great presentations and great designs. And I hope that you feel the support and appreciation from the committee members. And we look forward to the guaranteed maximum prices coming to us. And hopefully they will continue to be favorable and we can take those onto the board. So.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks. And glad to have Jake back in the saddle.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Stuffelbeam. Hearing nothing else, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Ron moved. Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
second this.
Thank you, Michelle. I heard Michelle in her car. Second. All those in favor say aye.